Is it German? Let's do it.
I would like to call the February 24th, 2021 meeting of the Board of Education to order. Will the secretary to the board please call the roll?
Aranda,
Here.
Daniels, Franchidakis,
Here.
Ling,
Here.
Ruffalo,
Here.
Towns, Williams.
Here. Mr. Langton, would you please lead the audience in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get into our agenda items, I'd just like to make a few comments about last week's vaccine distribution that took place at Addison Trail High School. There were almost 5,000 people vaccinated with the first injection in a 4-day period. District 88 and all their feeder schools worked together tirelessly to get this put together, with Addison Trail and District 88 obviously taking the lead with unbelievably great organization. A big shout out and thank you to the police department, the fire department, Rich Veenstra and the village for reaching out to all the seniors that were able to get vaccinated, all the volunteers, Jewel Osco, and Genoa Health. It appears that we have in excess of 80% of our employees that have been vaccinated with the first injection. And it's probably higher than that because there's a fair amount of employees that chose to go elsewhere or were able to get in on plans earlier. And I want to thank them for doing that too, because it does take a lot of thought and little apprehension when you go out and do it. And it's very much appreciated for all of these people, and I can't say enough about it. And if anybody else wants to add anything.
No, just once again, I think you nailed it, and very proud of the community, and hopefully we can keep going with this.
The only other group, Mr. Williams, that I think we should applaud are the many volunteers. Some of them came from school districts, some of them came from the community. Mr. Ruffalo actually on Saturday and Sunday helped out along with a bunch of our employees. So, it truly was a team effort. And now in the news, what you're seeing is communities not able to get it because there's this lull. In fact, I heard this morning that the DuPage County Health Department is going to get fewer than 5,000 vaccines next week to allocate. So our timing was really good, and we're very thankful that we had the opportunity.
Right. Yeah, when I talked about the school districts working together and kind of going back with the DuPage County Health Department, there were emails flying around for days in advance, all over the weekends. So everybody was working over the weekend and trying to get this done. So thanks again. Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the closed and regular session meetings of January 20th, 2021 as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Jeremiah,
Second.
by Serge. Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Aranda,
Yes.
Franchidakis,
Yes.
Ling,
Yes.
Ruffalo,
Yes.
Towns, Williams.
Yes, motion approved. Is there a motion to approve the accounts payable for the month of February 2021 as follows? Education Fund, $636,194.89. Operations and Maintenance Fund, $284,323.16. Debt Fund, 0. Transportation, $217,064.78. Capital projects, $185,653.75. Working cash fund, 0. Student activity, $5,287,048. For a total of $1,328,524.06. I have a motion, please.
A motion.
Second.
Motion by Zach, second by Rudy. Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Franchidakis,
Yes.
Ling,
Yes.
Ruffalo,
Yes.
Towns, Williams,
Yes.
Aranda.
Yes.
Motion approved. Is there a motion to approve the payroll for the month of January 2021 as follows? Education Fund, $3,160,068.04. Building Fund, $67,977.91. Transportation Fund, $3,731.38. IMRF Social Security Fund, $86,346.01, for a total of $3,318,123.34. Need a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by Jeremiah,
Second.
second by Zach. Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Lang,
Yes.
Ruffalo,
Yes.
Towns, Williams.
Yes.
Aranda,
Yes.
Frandidakis.
Yes.
Motion approved. I have not received any blue cards this evening on agenda items. We do have a presentation this evening. Dr. Kim Losi, Assistant Superintendent, will now give the board a presentation on Student Online Personal Protection Act.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. So, Mr. Langton and I discussed the importance of sharing some updates about the Student Online Personal Protection Act with the Board of Education so that you would know what steps we are taking to protect student data. We also felt it was important for the community and our parents to be aware. So as you know from some of our updates, we are expected to be SOPA compliant by July 1st. By that time, we will have to comply with all requirements within the laws of SOPA. I have tried to boil it down to some of the most important points rather than go through all of the regulations with you that Mr. Frangidakis and I are both trying to weed our way through as we approach July 1st. So SOPA was created because what started to happen as ed tech started to take off, hackers found that it was easy to gather student data and utilize it for bad purposes. Additionally, there were not a lot of protections in place for parents to take care of their student data or protect their students' data, and there was a lot of risks of breaches. One of the other issues as a result was that the ed tech companies really had no requirements if there was a data breach. So SOPA was created with the idea that we're going to protect student data and put some of that requirement on the operators as well as the school district. And so there's two parts to it, the operator's responsibility as well as the school district's part, and we're supposed to work collaboratively to protect the data. So SOPA will protect their student data. All of our ed tech providers are now required to provide privacy policies and terms of service that outline how the data is being used, specifically whether it's being shared with third-party providers or used for other purposes. Prior to SOPA, several companies were selling student data to other people to make money or using it for targeted advertising. That's no longer allowed under SOPA going forward. As we move forward, we are also required to have a written agreement with all of our ed tech vendors that we have to also display on our website so that it's available for public to review. We are also required to notify parents of any data breaches, and the operators are also responsible for notifying us within a timely manner. So we actually became aware that this was coming down the pipeline a few years ago, and so we have tried to start to become SOPA compliant prior to this school year. In 2018 to 2020, we started inventorying all of the district ed tech programs. We reviewed privacy policies in terms of service, and we provided a list of district-approved programs for staff and students to use. Our expectation is that our teachers are only using the programs on that list because they have been vetted already by the administration. This year, we adopted the board policies that were outlined by press that align with the designated privacy requirements. Additionally, we've identified the privacy officer that will ensure compliance. That's the Assistant Superintendent of Innovation and Information in our school district. We've been working with our school district attorney. Earlier, we met with him in January. He drafted a written addendum for us to utilize with any current contracts that we have. Since that initial meeting, the Learning Technology Center of Illinois has also shared the Illinois NDPA, National Data Privacy Agreement for Illinois. That is intended to be used for drafting most of our written agreements, and the addendum that the attorney has provided us will be used for companies that aren't willing to enter into the Illinois NDPA. We joined the Illinois Student Data Privacy Consortium. This is a consortium of school districts. The advantage of being involved with the consortium is if a school district has already entered into a written agreement with that company, other school districts can piggyback onto their agreement if they agree with the terms. So actually, it's a time saver and an efficiency for us as we work through all of these companies. If you're not aware, we do use approximately 50 to 60 different educational technology programs that share student data. And we've updated our district website. So we've included a section on parent rights, what parents should do if there is a data breach, where we would house the data breach information, and we've included our district policies so that they're easily accessible. So we still have a lot of work to do as we move forward. So our primary goal in the next 5 months is to obtain the written agreements with all of our operators that are utilized by the school district. So we need to exchange, or we have to have a signed agreement with any company that we exchange student data with. So that can be anything from student emails to more data like Skyward, where all of our student data is filtering through there. We will have to post all of those on the website and include all of the data elements that are collected by those companies. We are working to train our district staff. We have sent several communications out to staff already this year, letting them know that this is coming, reminding them that they should only be using the district-approved program list, and requesting that they submit any programs that are not currently on that list so that we can vet them and review them and determine if they are usable in the district so that we can also enter into a written agreement with those companies. And lastly, we need to continue to make sure that we maintain security. And so that's making sure that we have the inventory up to date and that we maintain reasonable security procedures. And as you know, we did send a brief update about the security procedures that we have put in place in the past year. This includes not only student education and teaching them how to protect their data, but also some network security practices so that we were protected on our end. Do you have any questions?
I have some questions.
Okay.
Has there been any, like, programs that we've had to just remove from the list because the companies didn't want to agree to the agreements?
Not yet,
No.
but I will tell you that we have been expressing a concern about that to teachers. So we have said that we're not approving anything new this school year until we get everything else, all the other agreements in place, and that we have warned them that some programs may go away because they may not be willing to enter into an agreement. But what we're finding is that this is starting to really pick up across the nation, and so that we suspect that if these companies want to stay in business, they're not going to have a choice but to enter into an agreement with us.
And what's the plan to notify parents about this law and let them know that this information is available?
So we utilized one of the press policies had a parent letter. We've added that to the student parent handbook, so that will be in the handbook for next school year.
Thanks.
Dr. Losey, you mentioned that these 50, 60 operators have to enter into an agreement with the school, right? Are they required to become SOPA compliant?
Well,
Considering that they do business with, or possibly someone predominantly with the educational institutions?
yes, so if you read the Illinois NDPA, which is the agreement that we would be sharing, and if you read the law of SOPA, the operator has a lot of responsibilities, and they are required to protect the student data using reasonable security measures. They are not supposed to sell student data or utilize targeted advertising. They are supposed to have a privacy policy in place that outlines all of those things, as well as terms of service that outline who can and can't use their products.
Okay.
So the operators do have some responsibilities, just as much as the school district does.
But we're the ones that have to be compliant, right?
Yeah, well, yes, but they still have to sign the agreement. So in a sense. And our attorney has also encouraged us to work with companies. We have another exhibit that they can sign, that we are gonna be asking them to sign, particularly companies like Skyward and Maps, where we share a lot of student data.
Yeah.
That requires them to carry some cyber insurance as well.
And I guess it would benefit them not to push back on that, on those agreements, so. okay.
Agreed.
Being the
Yep.
best
Some of the ones that we're the most concerned about are your big ones like Google and Microsoft. We don't have account managers with those companies because it's very easy to become licensed by them by purchasing the licenses. So our understanding and what we're hearing is that the state of Illinois is working to get a statewide agreement from those companies, which we would be able to fill out the Exhibit E and piggyback on.
Makes sense. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
I don't think this law is anything new. The state of California has already had a law like this
Correct.
for a number of years, and I believe New York. So I think there's gonna pick up trend as the years go by, you know, in other states as well.
Yep.
Especially now with pandemic, it's led to increased use of this and more scrutiny. So I think you'll see more of this come in the years to come.
Absolutely. And it is necessary to
Oh,
protect
definitely.
our children's data as much as possible. That fresh data is so valuable to hackers, so,
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much.
thank you.
We're down to committee reports. There was a Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting on February 16th. Mr. Ruffalo.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I will go over some highlights of the 2021 summer construction projects. We're excited to say that the libraries at Lincoln and Lake Park Elementary Schools will be transformed into innovation centers, including new furnitures, fixtures, equipment, and technology improvements. Also, throughout the district, we will have a door and hardware replacement program. Also, exterior site improvements, that includes asphalt, masonry, sidewalks, and landscaping work at some of our facilities. And here at Indian Trail, the Performing Arts area, which is the band and music room, will also be going through some major renovations. And also here at Indian Trail, we're looking to replace the north and south chiller, along with some BAS improvements. And finally, at Stone, staff lounge renovation will occur this summer. So we hopefully will not have any snow days, and we will be able to jump right into these projects. For 2022, we're primarily focusing on the round building here at Indian Trail, and we are looking hopefully to be able to do a complete renovation, especially the library, but also including the common spaces, the hallways, classrooms, restrooms, and that would be summer of 2022. And finally, our facilities update, talking about our own in-house projects. I first want to say great job by our maintenance department and ABM on snow removal and salting this summer. I'm sorry, this winter, wishful thinking. Today felt like summer. As the snow melts, it'll remind us of how much we got, how quickly, and how great of a job our guys did. Our crews and, like I said, our support staff at ABM. Also, Mr. Dirk gave us an update on the IDF closet cooling initiative, and basically by utilizing cooling cabinets installed and vented by our HVAC team, we're hoping to be able to retrofit all those closets at about $50,000. And initial numbers that we had gotten were almost $500,000, so that's some great news for our district. And then finally, one thing I do want to mention is we were able to get a early childhood grant, and one of the projects we're looking to do over at the ELC would be to provide shade in the playground area, because it gets a little toasty over there, and there are no trees on that side of the building. I believe I've hit everything on that, but if you'd like to add, gentlemen, feel free.
Nope, that seemed pretty comprehensive to me.
Thank you.
Okay, next committee report, intergovernmental meeting was a Zoom meeting on February 18th. Mr. Ruffalo again.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. We'll be brief. Most of the conversation was about the COVID vaccination, how great a job everybody did, and how great it was for our community. The fire department district did say how their cases have settled down as far as COVID cases and calls for COVID cases. The Addison Public Library did announce that they are now open for walk-in and curbside service. The high school did want to congratulate senior Fazan Ali he is a finalist for the National Merit Scholarship Program, and he, as a finalist, was up against 16,000 semifinalists. So that's some incredible news for one of our own here in Addison. And then they also announced that the abbreviated winter sports have started with, I believe they're live streaming some of the games. The theater group are safely practicing for some of their future performances in person. And then another thing I wanted to announce is this Saturday, February 27th, from 10 a.m. to noon, the Partners for Inspired Education, or the PI Foundation, will be doing a Pop the Trunk donation drive to collect personal care products and cleaning products for families in need. And once again, this Saturday, Addison Trail, I believe it's in their parking lot, and that's from 10 a.m. to noon. State Representative Kathy Willis just talked a little bit about the governor and the budget that he presented, and she did note that the legislators are making suggestions to try to move that along. The Addison Park District is reminding everyone they still do have an online brochure only, and that's for registration for various programs, and they did announce that a good portion of their programs are back. Their community survey is completed, and they are currently working on program assessments. And then finally, the Village of Addison, they did talk about, they gave away over 5,500 COVID kits, which did include masks, hand sanitizers, and educational materials. And they feel confident that's been helping with our community as COVID cases continue to go down. And remind everyone to please practice the 3 W's, which are, Mr. Langton?
The 3 W's are
Wear your
wear a
mask,
mask,
wash your hands,
wash
and
your hands,
watch your distance.
and watch your distance.
And I know you know it, because you taught me. I thought it was something else, so thank you very much. And finally, they are letting the community know that the Village Hall complex, or I think they call it the Village Commons, they're doing a major parking lot rehab this spring, and they're hoping to get it done by mid-June, but as everyone knows, it gets a little congested over there, so be ready for that. That is all I have. Anybody want to add to that?
The only thing that I wanted to reinforce, Mr. Ruffalo, and it is also regarding vaccines, there will be continued efforts locally to try and get vaccines out to the remaining residents of Addison who are still in need. So there are efforts at multiple levels. I know the library is talking about an effort that they're trying to get involved with. Dr. Barbonente, as you had said, did offer an opportunity for possibly the high school to be another site. And so we're going to work collaboratively as a community to keep bringing those opportunities to our residents until everybody who wants to be vaccinated is vaccinated. The other thing I wanted to highlight, you had mentioned the PI Foundation's donation drive this Saturday. I wanted to thank all of our employees and Mrs. Stelter actually for organizing it. Our employees really rose to the occasion. We have a whole box truck full of supplies that were donated from all of our employees at all of our schools, and those were delivered to the food pantry actually this week on behalf of our school district through the PI Foundation donation drive. So I was really proud of everybody who stepped up prior to the drive even happening on Saturday.
Okay, there was one other committee report, it's not on the agenda. There was a LEND meeting on January 22nd via Zoom. Mr. Keeley, Chuck Wortman, John Langton, and myself were all in attendance. There were 12 lawmakers from Springfield in that Zoom meeting, which is probably a record for a Zoom meeting, for a LEND meeting, but it's because it was via Zoom. And since it was so new after the election cycle and everything, all the lawmakers pretty much were just talking in generalities. So there wasn't a lot that came out of the meeting is what I can say. It was more of a meet and greet, and then some of the lawmakers were new lawmakers. So did you want to add anything, John?
No, that was it.
Okay, we're down to administrative reports. Superintendent Langton.
So So fortunately, I have a very brief report this evening. We already talked about the success of the vaccination distribution efforts in our community, and thank you, Mr. Williams, for highlighting that. I also wanted to remind our board members, we had a very active FOIA request couple of weeks, and thank you, Mr. Wortman, for responding to all 5 of those FOIA requests. A couple of them are ones that we typically get, a couple of others were not. If you have any questions, board members, regarding those requests, please let me know. And that is all that I have in my report.
Any questions for Mr. Langton? Okay, next up is Mr. Keeley from our business department. Mr. Keeley.
Thank you. Good evening. I have an equally concise report. Kind of doing a little show and tell here. So you'll see some pictures in your board docs of the snow team that Mr. Ruffalo referenced. And I'm seeing in my report here that it kind of mimics a lot of his report. So I'll keep it brief. Just a quick update that we did get our annual filings out, our W-2s or 1099s, in time as expected last month. It's always kind of an interesting process, and we're able to serve our staff and vendors by getting that done. And then I provided just a brief update on the 21 and 22 construction, which we hit in more detail on the B&G committee minutes. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Anything from the board? That was concise. Thank you. Mrs. Haney from the Teaching and Learning Department.
Good evening. Tonight, just wanted to have a few things to talk about. Throughout, we've always been talking about how we can bring our kids back to school, right? That's what we've been talking about for almost a year. But that's been our goal throughout the pandemic. So we continue to look at our current instructional models and are beginning to discuss options for maybe some changes at some point in the spring, summer, and of course the fall. There are a lot of factors, and we are beginning the meeting this week that will impact the decision, but we will be working with our administration and our instructional planning team to discuss and create plans that will best support the academic and social emotional needs of our students. So that's the priority. So we'll continue to keep you updated as we meet and try to problem solve through safely bringing our students back to school full time. So we'll
Okay,
see.
I don't want to interrupt you in the middle of the thing, but this is a topic, obviously, that's on everybody's mind, and I'd like to open it up to the board to ask any questions at this time about where we're at with this, and I don't want to lead the conversation, so if somebody wants to jump in.
Well, I'll just ask a quick question. I mean, how confident are we that we feel it could happen within the next few weeks?
Well, I mean, again, our first step, we've had initial conversations. Our next step is to meet with our administrators to look at how many kids are actually back at school now, and if that's something that we can manage, offering kids to come back full day, and then what other supports would we need to put in place? So there's so many factors that involve. If you think about supervision and lunch and how many students can we fit in classrooms? We have different size classrooms throughout the district, so do we have a number in a certain school because their classrooms are shaped differently or smaller or larger? And how many, if we have a lot of parents that want to return, that have their child return full time, we have to have a waiting list? So those are all the factors that we are considering. But we are having those conversations starting the end of this week, and then bringing it back to our instructional planning team, which was the initial team that started last spring last spring and then early summer, to kind of look at the options and potential for that. So.
And Mr. Ruffalo, I think it's important to restate what Mrs. Haney introduced with, and that is our goal always has been and will be to get our students back in person for as much time as possible. And so to answer your question very directly, I'm confident that in the coming weeks, we're going to be able to hammer out a plan to accomplish that this school year, and then we'll be able to communicate with parents, certainly with our board first, and then with parents, what that timeline looks like. So if I was a betting man, I would say that if you think about You know, we're getting into March now, and then at the end of March, of course, we have spring break. So my hope would be that no later than after spring break, we could return to increased time for students who want to be, or parents who want their kids to be here full-time, that we'll be able to accomplish that.
Hey, let me know if I'm missing something here. Parents have the option today to bring their kids back. And what's that response look like? Are they overwhelmingly telling us that they want their kids to come back, or no?
So that looks different at every school, so it just
Okay.
depends. So we have some schools that have, 50, 40, in the 40% range, some schools that are lower than that.
Okay.
I do know that at schools, we have parents that as weeks have gone on, that there is increased student, requests for students to return to school. So the numbers are increasing.
And I would be cautious if we're going into spring break to say it's gonna happen right after spring break, considering that we went 100% remote into the holidays for that reason, and then we're, right.
Yep.
So just,
Yeah.
let's be cautious
Yep,
about that.
and those are the factors that we need to discuss with the larger administrative team.
And some of the important things to note is that the COVID numbers statewide have been dropping significantly, and most importantly, in our community, they've dropped significantly. The second factor is that, and we already stated this ad nauseum, we vaccinated our staff, which is a huge step, and that raises confidence levels for us to bring more kids back in. The third piece that and this is one that we're struggling with, putting our arms around right now, is why do parents currently choose in-person hybrid, or why do parents choose full remote? And we had a really good conversation with our school principals this past week about that very piece. Because what we can't do, right now at least, is open it up full for every student to come back in person for a full day. That would be very challenging just because of the social distancing requirements and the management of it all. We would love to be able to do that, but that concerns us. So we would have to, as I said, we would have to communicate with parents.
Yeah.
And we would have to, Mrs. Haney alluded to this, we would have to have a capacity, what we would be comfortable in every school, and maybe even, because some of our schools have very different sized classrooms, so it may look different even from classroom to classroom. And then whatever that capacity is, we'd have to have a waiting list for other parents who still want their kids in person to make sure that we don't violate those guidelines.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question, John? As far as the numbers, what do they look like from January? Are they steady, or is there an increase, or is it going the opposite direction?
That's a great question, Mr. Frangidakis. So what I can share with you is what I refer to as week one, which was that week of October 19th. We had a little over 40% of our students district-wide in-person hybrid. By the time we reached the Thanksgiving time when we went back to full remote, we were down to about 31%. When we returned after Martin Luther King Day, we returned with about 28% of our students district-wide in person, and that includes elementary and middle school. And that's actually risen slowly. We've added about 63 kids since that week of January 18th. So we're at about 30% right now.
Okay.
And as Mrs. Haney had said, those numbers are slowly increasing, which is great. And we're encouraging parents, we're advocating for getting kids back in person.
Another thing I think that'll help here, if we're looking to bring more students in, and I know I've talked about this before, I think we should look into offering COVID tests to staff and students. Obviously, we can't make it mandatory.
Offering what?
Offering COVID tests.
Oh,
Yeah, I know there are some schools that are doing it, and we might be able to use some of the funding from the federal government for the, round two of the CARES Act money. I mean, is that something we've looked into, or?
We have not looked into it because it is very costly.
Yeah,
The other piece that you have to remember, and I apologize, I'm not going to use the right terminology, but those, the spit tests or those tests that school districts are administering are not conclusive. So it's really a screener, if you will.
yeah,
So it still would require that employee or that student to actually have the more thorough test in order to have a conclusive diagnosis. And I'm not saying that they're a bad thing or they're a good thing, but we have not aggressively looked at bringing that in. And honestly, it's because of the money. It's very expensive to deploy a program like that.
Would we not be able to use some of the federal funding that we received to pay for
Possibly.
that? Okay.
Possibly.
I realize it's not foolproof, but I think it's another, I guess, tool in our tool belt to make the, you know,
Yeah.
school experience safer, you know.
And I think our challenge will be that even if we were to do that, there's still only so many students we can safely have in classrooms at one time. So that's kind of the challenge that we're looking at.
What are the roadblocks with having the teacher teach a full day and then having a percentage of the kids there and then a percentage of the kids e-learning using, the cameras and the things that we have gotten? What's the roadblock to making that happen?
Well, currently, our teachers are doing that now. So we have, at least at the elementary level, so it looks different at the middle school and also at the early learning center. But we do have our teachers teaching simultaneously. And they have students, an AM and a PM session, and those students are broken up so that there are less students in the class. But they are only teaching a half day, so that's what we have to look at. So then do we take, for a certain class, a given class, if I have 5 students in the morning and 6 students in the afternoon, I'm just making up a number, if I were to combine that to 11 students, and that would work out in a certain classroom. But in another classroom, we have 20 students, that would not be able to happen. So we have to problem solve through those types of challenges. At the middle school, that's another challenge as well. So looking at, right now we're on the ABE schedule. So students come to school 2 days a week and then they're remote learning the other 2 or 3. But that is something that we will be problem solving through. So in some instances it will work, but in some instances it won't, and that's where we have to problem solve through.
So if we open it up to full day, and I realize you can't answer this definitively because of the fact that you just talked about, but could we handle, say, 60% of the students?
And that's very difficult to say. We might be able to in one school, so 60% district-wide, or 60% in.
An average, I'm just looking
On an
at-
average. I think it would depend, in some schools, we might be able to do that. In other schools, we may not.
Okay.
It's very hard, and that's why we really have to talk with our our principals about how many students do you actually have, what are the size of your classrooms, and talk about those limits that we need to have.
Are we hearing any talk about loosening up the social distancing guidelines?
So I was on a meeting on Monday with the DuPage County Health Department Director, and we were talking directly on this topic. And unfortunately, the DuPage County Health Department is not at all. They don't want to deviate from that in any way, shape, or form. The CDC guideline and the Illinois Department of Public Health, which mimics the CDC guideline, basically refers to the 6 feet as the optimal. So they want, in most cases, use 6 foot, or in all cases, practical, or whatever the verbiage was that they used. So that doesn't mean that you and I can't be closer than 6 feet occasionally. But what we don't want to do is, if at all possible, set up a classroom so that we have kids regularly sitting closer than 6 feet, and that's going to be the challenge. And that's why, again, we most likely will have to create a capacity limit. Now, is that going to be by school, is that going to be district-wide, or is that going to be by classroom? Right now, it makes more sense, in my opinion, to do it by classroom, because our classrooms are so very different in sizes from school to school and even within a school.
How do you see this changing by August? And
So-
if it doesn't, how long do we go?
Yeah, and part of what we haven't discussed, but Mrs. Haney alluded to it, is we're planning for spring for right now, and that's what we've just been talking about. We're planning for summer, which is going to be our summer program that we've already shared with you. And then we're also looking very aggressively at what are going to be our best options for next fall. Because, Mr. Towns, I want kids full day in person at any cost for next fall. I'm not writing this year off. If we can accomplish that this year, that's fantastic. But next fall, these kids need to get back to school. And my team is right there with me. Our principals are right there on that same, in that same opinion. But what we're gonna have to look at are what are our best options. And we're
And
looking
we're gonna
at-
have to bend the rules then, because there's no way they're gonna change.
Yeah, and again, bending the rules, I'm not worried about bending the rules or following the rules. I'm worried about making sure that we can confidently say our kids are in a safe situation, our employees are in a safe situation. Us getting the vaccine this past week raised my confidence level in that vein significantly. The other piece is, there's two things that we have no control over right now. The one is, what is the activity gonna be like 2 months from now, 3 months from now, or next August? Hopefully, it continues to trend better. We've actually been very fortunate. Those numbers are looking really good right now, and they're continuing to improve. So if that continues, that's great. The second variable is what's going to happen with the vaccination of children, and what's the time frame going to be on that? And none of us know that for sure. We hear all sorts of things in the news. The Department of Public Health and the CDC, they don't have anything conclusive on it yet. But I believe those two variables are going to raise people's confidence level. What the other thing, and I wouldn't say this is a number 3, but this is a variable, is whether or not the State Board of Education is going to require school districts to offer a remote option to parents. And that's going to be key, because if they require us to offer a remote option to parents, that puts a little a pickle into the situation that it frustrates me, to be honest with you, because despite our best efforts, I don't think anybody, kids, parents, teachers, are happy with how we're doing it right now, with kids having to experience both at the same time, teachers having to teach both at the same time. Our preference would be to have, if teachers have to teach remote, then this teacher teaches full remote all day long, and that's it, just remote kids. If we can have kids in person, full day, that teacher teaches those kids in person, full day, just like we used to. So, again, what we don't know is what those numbers are gonna look like.
Well, you know they're gonna give them an option. I mean, there's a very, very good chance of that.
There's a lot of lobbying going on right now, Mr. Towns.
Come
And
on, come on, you know what's gonna happen.
and that's why I'm gonna be prepared for that
Okay.
for next fall. And our
Is-
team have had very active discussions about that the last 2 weeks, and that's gonna be part of our planning process. Because, again, we're planning for this spring, this summer, and next fall to make sure that our kids have the best options to learn possible.
Well, I just want to say, I mean, we're going, I think a month from now, based on what I heard in the late news, which, I mean, literally right before I got here, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine looks like they're going to push that through pretty quickly. And with that great news, they're talking about 400 million vaccines available this June. And they're talking about having a surplus of vaccines. So hopefully in March, when we have our meeting, we will have a whole different view of how it's gonna go, and at least we're planning for options, but I wanna be positive because, it's gotta change, so. Hopefully, nobody will make that remote decision, cause they won't have to.
Sounds like we're still in the phase we were last year in September, where we were trying to make decisions, but yet we didn't have all the facts, and there's a lot of level of uncertainty still, so. What's Addison Trail doing?
I really can't comment on the details of what their planning is.
Okay,
I can tell you that they're in the process of starting to bring kids back, but I don't know what their plans for next year are.
so they're doing remote and hybrid?
No,
They're-
they're e-learning
they're-
right now.
They're
in the-
e-learning,
Yeah,
okay,
they're in the process of bringing kids back.
I
That's what I'm aware of.
okay, thank you.
The only difference, Mr. Aranda, between September and now, and I think it's important to note, is that today, people want kids back in school bad, for all the right reasons. Last September, we were still dealing with very elevated numbers and a lot of fear, and I believe that's different today, because.
Not everyone wants.
You say that, but statistically.
Correct, you're right, that's correct.
You say that, but statistically, there's still a large population that's still at home, and they have the option today to come back, and they're not,
Yes.
so.
That's not a full in,
I understand.
That's a remote option.
That's a
that they
fact,
put.
though.
That's a fact, that they have chosen the remote, but we don't know if it all day was, if it was given to them, we don't know what the numbers would be.
That's correct.
I guess it would be a lot higher.
Yeah, most of our, actually, all of our principals concluded that a lot of their parents have chosen full remote because they in elementary, because they struggle with that midday pickup and drop-off. So they believe if we offer full day in person, they're gonna come in droves, which is a good thing. It's a good problem to have. So that's what we're trying to get our arms around, to see what would our capacity be so that we could bring as many kids back in person as possible, as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I got 2 kids at home, so I completely understand. I want them back, but let's just do it right, and you guys have a challenge certainly in front of you.
And I
So,
think another thing that we benefit or difference between last fall is we've learned a lot. And we went into all of these decision-making processes in the dark, and I think we've learned a lot. So we know more of our challenges that are in front of us, and so as we plan, we can account for some of those challenges that we know will come up. So that definitely makes for more effective planning. So it is different. I think that, again, people know that this is what's best for our kids, for our students. So there are still lots of logistics challenges that we can't control, but we're gonna do everything we can to try to work around them so we can offer our kids to come back to school for as long as we can in a school day.
so earlier it was said that the DuPage County Health Department won't even consider changing the social distancing guidelines. Yet rumor has it that there's some schools that are violating those guidelines. What kind of jeopardy are they in, or are they? Or is it just a guideline?
So there have been legal opinions cast that there are liabilities that are associated with not following the guidelines that you could be subject to. But again, those are opinions. There have not been any cases tried. And you're absolutely right, Mr. Williams, there are a few school districts, even locally, not many, but there are a few of them that have openly violated those social distances. And one of them in particular is very recent, just started. Another one has done it a little bit longer. But I can't speak to anything other than the guideline that came from the CDC to the IDPH and then to the local health department is a guideline. They cannot and they will not enforce it. They still say it is the local school district's discretion to make those decisions.
And the parents have the option.
Right now they do. That is
So if the parents don't like what's going on in the school, they can pull them back to remote.
That's correct. Under the plan we have right now, that's absolutely correct. Yep,
In those schools too.
correct. Yep, and some of them have, I'm sure, without a doubt.
And we've done a nice job. We let our parents decide. Now, we want to do other things, but for what the options are we had, we let our parents decide. So in every individual case, they get to choose.
Any other questions or comments on this topic? Okay, Mrs. Haney, you get to take over again.
Thank you. Well, just to continue our conversation about meeting academic gaps, we are planning for a summer school program in person. So last week, our principals presented our summer school plan to all staff. I did attach it for your review. I will highlight talk to you a little bit about the highlights. But we are planning for an in-school summer school program for 3 weeks in July 12th to 30th, for half days and bringing students in. The eligibility requirements are, as you can see, are truancy students that are coming and showing up, but they're not engaging consistently in class. They may have been coming, but they are still struggling. We're going to be looking at some of the MAP scores as well in the spring. And then our students that receive special education services that are not eligible for the NEDSEC extended year program will also be candidates for the summer school program, also teacher and administrator recommendation. We're looking at locations for kindergarten camp, so that's something that's separate, but we decided to align it with our summer school program for transportation purposes and just to keep everything consolidated in certain areas, because there's a lot going on in the district this summer. So kindergarten camp at the Early Learning Center, like it always has been. Ardmore would be hosting incoming first and second grade students. Army Trail, incoming third, fourth, and fifth grade students. And then Indian Trail would support students incoming grades 6, 7, and 8. Our band and orchestra, we just have determined they're going to actually be here at Indian Trail as well this summer. So as you can see the timeline, I won't go through it. So we've already started the process. We're going to be looking at starting the hiring process for coordinators and site supervisors. We've started talking about what does it look like academically, so meeting with our content area curriculum committee, so our math committee is talking about what are the gaps and where are you seeing the gaps, the next grade level, what are the things that the kids really need to know. So we've really come up with like 3 big topics for math that we will be focusing on and focusing our instruction on, so students will be even more ready for their next grade level. Let's see, we will have, so the survey is going out to parents, so there's recommendation. We have parent-teacher conferences coming up next week. So those students that are eligible, teachers and principals will be having conversations with parents. We'll ask for like a commitment in March, so then we'll have more numbers, and definitely this will help us to make sure we have enough space that we have allocated, staffing, transportation needs, so we'll keep you updated. By April, parents have to make the final commitment, but we hope to have a general idea in March. So also this month, so obviously with everything going virtual, we have many conferences that we offered staff during the month of February. I think the great thing about doing this is we can offer it to more teachers, because we can, they can watch virtually on certain days and then watch either on their own time or a separate time. So we don't necessarily need to pull them, and we don't have subbing issues with this. So it's worked out really well. So we had 36 teachers attend the IDEA conference that lasted all month. I think it finished up today. Dr. Losi wrapped it up today. We had 10 staff members attend the National ESSA conference in early February. Tomorrow, the Illinois Multilingual Conference takes place. We have 12 staff members attending this conference. So many topics that we're hearing, and a lot of that remote pieces coming in, different types of technology tips, kind of that simultaneous teaching. We have supports for English learners. There are tons of topics over the month that our teachers have been learning about. And like I said, the best thing is all these conferences are offering access like for months ahead, so that teachers can go back and view sessions recorded. So that's very exciting. As we just talked about, Friday is Countywide Institute Day. Staff will participate in many different workshops of their choice. They signed up in January for a session through NEDSEC in DuPage County. Again, as I said, they're all virtual, and staff will report to their home schools to view or participate in their sessions. So we're excited about that. Look different this year, but it will still, I think, be worthwhile. We talked a little bit about parent-teacher conferences. They are next Friday, March 5th. They will all be virtual conferences. We know our tech department, thank you tech department, they're going to be making sure that they've adjusted the Zoom settings to allow for families that don't have ASD4 logins to participate, and our parents are signing up through Skyward Family Access. So due to conferences, there will be no in-person learning on Friday, March 5th. Our schedules, so students at the Early Learning Center will have, because of parent-teacher conferences, no instruction, grades 1 through 5. They'll connect synchronously but remote with their teachers, and then in the afternoon, they will have asynchronous work to do. Specials will occur asynchronously as well, so that teachers, if they need to participate in conferences. And then grades 6 through 8 will follow their Wednesday schedule. And then in the afternoon, there's no instruction synchronously, and parent-teacher conferences will take place. The last thing I have is our state-mandated assessments. Many districts throughout the state, we did apply for a waiver due to the pandemic and already lost instruction time. Lost instruction time by providing these assessments is huge, and so it does not appear right now that we will be getting a waiver. So we are moving forward with plans for implementation. So they are requiring right now that all testing is done in person. So we are working hard to try to accommodate people and schedule. So you'll see all the windows. So our access for ELs is starts on March 15th. The IR, ISA, and DLM start on the 15th. We have kids data upload in April, and then we will be testing all of our students remote and in person on MAP. So we think and hope that this is going to be one tool that we're going to be able to, that will be the most valid for our students and our teachers to kind of determine where our students are and the reflection of their achievement this year. And that is all I have. I know, that was a lot, but thank you.
I would like to make a public comment, I guess, regarding the state assessments that Mrs. Haney was just referring to. I want to thank Tony Sanders. Tony is the superintendent of Elgin U46 School District. He led a very comprehensive effort to get the Illinois State Board of Education to pursue a waiver through the federal government from all mandated assessment requirements for this year, for obvious reasons. It's going to be next to impossible to pursue doing in-person assessments with all of our students without disrupting instruction for everybody. And I applaud, and it's not just Mrs. Haney, it's the entire team and then some of our employees who have tried to put their arms around how do we possibly schedule this so that we limit disruptions to student learning. In a year when all we've had is disruption to student learning, the last thing we should do is force kids to take an assessment, and it's not just one, it's many, that has no value. It's not going to inform our instruction. It's not going to change the goals that we set, because so many of these data points are not going to be valid, especially system-wide. Maybe for an individual kid here and there, it might be accurate, but it's a huge disruption. So I just want to, again, thank Tony Sanders from School District U46 and everybody. I'm actually very proud. Most school superintendents across the state of Illinois signed off on a joint letter. And I also want to applaud Dr. Carmen Ayala, the state superintendent, for supporting this. Unfortunately, it was not approved. And I can't say enough about how disappointed we are, because it's not what's best for kids. It's absolutely not what's best for kids, so.
John, if I understand correctly, last year, these assessments weren't even administered, so
That's correct.
further even proves the point, like,
Yes.
you know.
And for school districts like ours who rely on so much federal funding, our hands are tied. If we don't administer them, we risk having that funding pulled, and you're talking millions and millions of dollars.
I had a question regarding summer school. Do we know, obviously the program's gonna be optional for families. Have we identified the kids that would qualify for summer school? And let's say every family took us up on the option, would we be able to accommodate all those kids?
Well, we hope so.
Mhm.
So we have, the teachers already, the teachers already have been creating, there's a form that they need to fill out to determine students that would be eligible based on all of these criteria. And so we planned for like the largest, again, keeping social distancing, and I guess it would be good news if we had to expand more, but I do believe that we have, in our mind, our planning, have accommodated students that would want to return for summer school.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for Mrs. Haney? Okay, thank you very much. We're down to action items. Superintendent Langton.
So our first action item for this evening is the acceptance of resignation requests. Mr. Wortman, could you review those, please?
Yes, I will. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm presenting to the board the approval for the resignation requests for the following District 4 employees who are outlined in your board docs and mentioned this evening. So the resignation list includes, in the area of licensed personnel, we have 2. We have Oscar Avila and Louisa Knight. In the area of educational support personnel, we have 3. We have Laura Avello, Alyssa Baeza, and also Michelle Diorio. So I do recommend that these requests be approved this evening.
Is there a motion to accept the resignation requests as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Serge,
Second.
second by Jeremiah. Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Ruffalo,
Yes.
Towns, Williams.
Yes.
Aranda,
Yes.
Frangiotis.
Yes.
Lang.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Mr. Williams, I would like to highlight and thank and even congratulate both Laura Avello and Michelle Diorio, who resigned after many years of serving. Laura at Fullerton Elementary School and Michelle at Indian Trail Junior High School. I got to know both of them over the years, and we're going to miss them. They're both top quality people who made a difference for our kids. So thank you to them. So our next action item is the approval of employment requests. Mr. Wortman, could you review those?
Yes, I will. I am presenting to the board for your approval the employment requests for the following people. Their names are outlined again in your board docs and mentioned this evening. So the employee list includes the following. In the area of educational support personnel, we have Dean Konstantopoulos and also Michael Haney. I do recommend that these requests be approved this evening.
Is there a motion to approve the employment request as presented?
So moved.
Second.
By Jeremiah, second by Zach. Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Towns, Williams.
Yes.
Aranda,
Yes.
Frangiotis.
Yes.
Lang.
Yes.
Ruffalo.
Yes.
Motion approved. Dean, welcome aboard.
You can breathe a sigh of relief, Dean, they hired you. Our third action item for this evening is the authorization to begin the tentative budget process. Mr. Keeley, could you review that?
Thank you. Feels like we just got done with the last one, but I'm here tonight seeking authorization from the board to start preparing the fiscal year '22 budget. I've provided a calendar for the budget process. You can see we're at the beginning of it in February, and it will conclude in September with a public hearing on the final budget. Therefore, I respectfully request the board approve the attached resolution designating me as the chief school business official to prepare the tentative budget as presented.
Is there a motion to authorize the Assistant Superintendent for Business to begin the tentative budget process for fiscal year 2022 as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Jeremiah,
Second.
second by Rudy. Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Williams.
Yes.
Aranda,
Yes.
Frangiotis.
Yes.
Lang.
Yes.
Ruffalo.
Yes.
Towns.
Motion approved.
Our next action item is the approval of the wireless access point replacement bid. Mr. Keeley.
Thank you, and we have the astute Mr. Kuko in the crowd as well, in case the board members have questions, because I will not be answering technical questions at this time, for everyone's sake. At any rate, as we are well aware, we take full advantage of the FCC E-rate program. Mr. Kuko manages that and keeps on tabs of that with our friends from Solutions Consultants. As you will recall, the E-rate program is an 80-20 match reimbursable program. For this particular procurement process, we are replacing 319 of our wireless access points that have reached the end of their useful life. Mr. Kuko has been working diligently with Telesolution Consultants and managing the process throughout. I do believe that they did some piloting of several different manufacturers' items and eventually landed on the Meraki access points. They did actually request all vendors to provide a second round of pricing too on this, so we did see some discounts from the initial proposals. And in the end, again, it was the Meraki access points. CDW was the lowest responsive bidder at $220,254.18. Therefore, I respectfully request the board approve the recommendation to make the purchase of the Meraki access points from CDWG as presented.
Is there a motion to approve the wireless access point replacement bid as presented?
So moved.
Motion
Second.
by Serge, second by Jeremiah. Questions or discussion?
I have a question. Do we know approximately how much money is left on our budget for this amount? Or in this category?
For
Yeah.
E-rate?
Yeah, what's left for
Off
this?
the top of our head, no, but we'll
No.
provide an update to the board afterwards. I can tell you that with each round, we do maximize Mr. Kuko and I review that and ensure that we are, so that we're not leaving any money on the table. But we can prepare something and send it to the board later
Okay.
this week.
One thing I hope happens sometime this year, there's been some discussion that the federal government's gonna allow the FCC to actually reimburse schools for the cost of hotspots. I know we purchased a number of hotspots to provide our students, so there's a possibility that that amount might be, reimbursable by E-rate in the future. Yeah, there's been some discussion, especially now with what's going on, so hopefully we'll see that.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Aranda,
Yes.
Frangakis,
Yes.
Lang,
Yes.
Ruffalo,
Yes.
Towns, Williams.
Yes, motion approved.
Our fifth action item is the approval of the purchase of library furniture for Lake Park and Lincoln Elementary Schools. Mr. Keeley, can you review that, please?
Thank you. As discussed earlier in Mr. Ruffalo's B&G committee report, we are renovating the library at Lincoln and Lake Park this summer. And we worked with Leggett, Dr. Losi and Mrs. Haney worked with them, as they did on the furniture standards last year, applied some of the same methodology to find the most economical, most flexible, most beneficial furniture and fixtures for those spaces. In the end, they proposed the majority of the furniture through Bradford, which is a manufacturer that specializes in those types of in library type furniture, as well as Frank Cooney and Kruger International, or KI. Therefore, I do respectfully recommend that the board retroactively approve the purchase of the furniture as presented.
Is there a motion to approve the purchase of the Lake Park and Lincoln Library furniture as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Jeremiah,
Second?
second by Zach. Questions or discussion? I will say that all this furniture came in right in line with what the original estimates were.
But we already have it.
Well, we moved on it because of timing issues.
I'll speak on that. There are potential tariffs that they're threatening to have put in place. So in my industry, we're getting set for aluminum and steel prices to jump. And so when Mr. Keeley presented it, discussion from B&G was, well, we know we need to buy it. Let's buy it now so we can save us some money, put it somewhere else.
Super special committee.
We're speculating in metals now? Okay.
We are.
Let me see. Write that down.
We're jacks of all trades, sir.
Master of none.
Roll call, please.
Frangakis,
Yes.
Lang,
Yes.
Ruffalo,
Yes.
Towns, Williams,
Yes,
Aranda.
Yes.
motion approved.
Our final two action items, to spare our board members and our audience from having to hear me read very lengthy action items, I'm going to just turn both of them over to Mr. Keeley, so they only have to be read once.
Certainly. So we began this discussion at the January meeting to talk about zeroing out the school district's debt. We followed through with the 2004 debt certificate, and the money is sitting in escrow due to close this week to close out that debt certificate. The district would then in effect be at a zero debt position. We do have fund balance remaining in the bond and interest fund, as discussed last month, so we're going to seek the board's approval, a multi-step process to issue working cash bonds. We will take the funds in the bond and interest fund to pay off those working cash bonds prior to the end of the fiscal year, and then we will effectively have a zero balance in there. Really, it's just a legal step for us to take. We are issuing bonds, but we're not technically incurring long-term debt. We will be paying off the note very quickly. So before you, the first item here, item 7:6, I do have to read the entire thing for this to be official, but we are seeking approval of the resolution declaring the intention to issue up to $500,000 of working cash fund bonds of the district for the purpose of increasing the district's working cash fund, and directing that notice of such intention be published in a manner provided by law. I respectfully request the board approve the resolution as presented.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution declaring the intention to issue $500,000 working cash fund bonds of the district for the purpose of increasing the district's working cash fund and direct that notice of such intent to be published in a manner provided by law as presented?
So
So moved. Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Serge. Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Lang,
Yes.
Ruffalo,
Yes.
Towns, Williams.
Yes.
Aranda,
Yes.
Frangedakis.
Yes.
Motion approved.
The next action item is the approval of the resolution to call the hearing for these bonds, and that will take place at the next board meeting. So before you, you do have the approval, the action item of the approval of the resolution calling a public hearing concerning the intent of the Board of Education of the district to sell up to $500,000 working cash bonds for the purpose of increasing the working cash fund of the district. I respectfully request the board approve the resolution, or the motion as presented.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution calling for a public hearing concerning the intent of the Board of Education of the district to sell $500,000 working cash bonds for the purpose of increasing the working cash fund of the district as presented?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Rudy, second by Jeremiah. Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Ruffalo.
Yes.
Towns, Williams.
Yes.
Aranda,
Yes.
Frangedakis.
Yes.
Lang.
Yes.
Motion approved. We're down to discussion items. Superintendent Knighton.
Yes, sir. Please remember that the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Education will be held right here at Indian Trail at 7:00 PM on Wednesday, March 24th. I would like to ask Mr. Wortman if he could give an update on kindergarten registration and the registration of returning students for next school year.
I'd be delighted to do that. So, but we are thrilled to announce that we are conducting online registration for kindergarten and for new students for the first time in Addison District 4. So we're really excited about this. So beginning on March 8th, parents of incoming kindergarten students will be able to register online using an online portal through the district website. This new method will increase our efficiencies at the building and also will provide immediate enrollment numbers for all of our secretaries and our principals. Notices will be sent out to the entire community announcing this new format. And in addition, also schools will also be sending out the information in their newsletters and their s'mores and things like that. So gone are the days of the paper enrollment packets. So we're really thrilled about that. We will also be holding appointments for kindergarten families at their home school on March 24th and also April 10th for them to bring in items that they could not provide during the online registration. Such things such as proofs of residency or birth certificates if they're unable to scan them into the online portal. So parents will receive information about how to schedule those appointments at their own individual buildings. So we're really excited about that. So gone are the mass crowds at Army Trail for registration for kindergarten, and hopefully this will expedite our process quite a bit. So in regards to returning students, their registration will begin on April 5th, with registrations due on or before May 10th. Offices will also have extended hours on April 28th and on Saturday, May 1st, to turn in those necessary documents if need be. So again, information will be sent out by their individual school closer to the April date. So we're looking forward to this new and improved registration process this year. As always, if parents ever have any questions specifically about how to register, we do ask them to seek out information from their building, or they can also contact the district office as well. Does anyone have any questions?
I would like to thank you, Mr. Wortman. Our board members probably aren't aware that the online registration for kindergarten students has been one of your goals for 12 years, so I'm glad you
There you
finally
go.
have gotten that accomplished right before you retire.
I can, there you go. It took a while, didn't it?
I'm just kidding.
So, but thank you to
It's more
Dr.
fun,
Lewis.
it's more fun when they come in.
It really actually is a lot of fun, so.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wortman. Also included in your packet is the proposed board meeting dates for the 21-22 school year. So if you haven't already, take a look at those dates at your leisure. Please note that Mrs. Stelter did verify with the Village of Addison and Itasca Bank and Trust that the date for the Shape of Addison next year is going to be the last Wednesday of January. So we scheduled our board meeting accordingly the week before that. So if you have any concerns with those dates, please let us know as soon as possible. And then our last item, discussion items, there were no communications between the public and the board using our electronic emails. And that is all that we have.
Okay, I have received a couple of blue cards that came in remotely, and because they came in remotely, I'm not going to read through the board policy. Rosangela Clemente, a parent of 2 students at Stone and 1 at Indian Trail. And the statement is, many districts in the surrounding area are working on adding more in-person school hours to the day, at least at the elementary level. Has there been any discussion in our district about doing this? For example, having elementary students go to school Monday through Friday, 8:45 to 1 p.m. Students would eat a snack at school and then go home for lunch. Obviously, most of this has been answered due to our discussion that we had earlier with Mrs. Haney and the comments and questions from the board. So I don't think there's any real reason to respond to that, because we are looking to actually expand it more than those hours that were recommended there. This next blue card, Nicole Caponegre, who has 3 students at Stone School. I know surrounding districts have been in school this entire time. Now most districts are having discussions about having students come in for a longer day, 8:45 to 1 o'clock, starting in March. Eating a snack at school but sending them home for lunch As Addison District 4 had these discussions, being the surrounding districts are making it work, Addison needs as well, so the students are not at a disadvantage. Thank you for your time. Again, most of that was answered in our discussion, but I would like to state that it isn't most of the districts surrounding us that are in person full-time. And the few districts that are in full-time are usually a smaller district. They have square footage that they can do the social distancing, and they also have the staffing, unless you wanted to add something to it.
No, I think that's very accurate. It's definitely not all school districts in the area, and there are a few of them, but you're absolutely correct that they are the smaller districts. A couple of them are smaller.
But anyway, we are working towards that goal, as was stated earlier. Is there any miscellaneous unfinished business to bring before the board this evening?
Mr. Williams, the only thing that I wanted to add was that every board member should have received a copy of the Illinois Association of School Boards Constitution, position statements, and belief statements. So this is a result of, in fact, Mr. Williams was your representative at the Delegate Assembly. He has been every year, and this is the product of that work back in the fall. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn the Wednesday, February 24, 2021 Board of Education meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Serge, second by Rudy. Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Towns, Williams.
Yes.
Aranda,
Yes.
Frangakis.
Yes.
Lang.
Yes.
Ruffalo.
Yes.
Motion approved, meeting adjourned. Thank you for attending.